Hello everyone, it's time for yet another collection update because I do have a bunch of new vinyls that I'm very excited to talk about and to add to my collection. And for a bit of context for you guys, basically I was introducing my friend to vinyls for the first time. He's actually never even stepped into a vinyl store for the first time, so we kind of went exploring not knowing what kind of vinyl shops we'd find. And indeed we found a very interesting choice. So we were somewhere in the plateau and we stepped into a place called Au 33 Tours. It was my first time stepping in there and honestly I had a blast. Got a great selection, definitely much more rock, pop, alternative oriented. It has a decent section for jazz, francophone music as well. The rap section was a bit bare bones, but you know what, you can't win them all. And in any case, we did not leave the store empty handed. It's actually kind of hilarious because my friend, he doesn't even have a turntable and yet he ended up walking home with 3 vinyls underneath the armpit. Yeah, I should have probably told him that when you start chasing a dragon with vinyls, it becomes expensive real fast, as you can tell with this channel. I mean, how many collection update videos have I done thus far? I'm sure we'll be seeing much more throughout the months and eventually years down the line of this YouTube channel. In any case, for my part, I ended up getting myself some really essential albums that I consider to be some of the most important musical experiences I've had of my life, really. So my first choice actually was a metal album, and honestly it's one of my all-time favorite metal albums at this point. In fact, there's a sequence of 3 albums that this band put out that are just solid gold one after another. Yeah, that's kind of like my holy trinity of progressive rock, progressive metal, and conceptual albums. I am talking about Mastodon's Crack the Sky. So this is actually the first album I discovered from them, which is hilarious because at the time it was their latest album to put out, their 4th one. So I kind of went in reverse, listening to Crack the Sky, Blood Mountain, and Leviathan. And indeed, those 3, oh my god, honestly, they're each like a 9.5 out of 10. Crack the Sky is just a delicious, layered, sonically varied, and one of the most interesting metal albums I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. And I really do like the thematic of the album, and the artwork, as always with Mastodon, is just incredible. I really do think that Leviathan, Blood Mountain, Crack the Sky are just essential albums of the 2000s. Without a question, some of my most important albums of that decade and really of all time. And it is hands down the highlight of Mastodon's career. Did they make bad albums after that? Not quite. I do think that they're a very consistent band overall, though I don't think they ever came close, anywhere close really, to those 3 albums. I do think that Once More Around the Sun is probably their best album since. I'm probably ranging between 8 and 8.5 on that one. But yeah, Crack the Sky is like a 9 to 9.5 out of 10. It's just a glorious experience. Now, the next album, we're going back about 2 decades before this one. This would be honestly one of the most important alternative rock albums of all time as far as I'm concerned. And probably I'm not alone in thinking this. This would be Pixies' debut album, Surfer Rosa. This is such an iconic alternative rock album and really one of the defining pre-grunge era albums to come out in the late 80s. It's an album that still today I listen to and I just have a blast listening to. It's really raw and energetic and has some of my favorite Pixies songs to date. Of course, Where Is My Mind is a no-brainer. This is such an anthemic moment that I think many people recognize, of course, through fame of film like Fight Club. The ending of that movie ends with that song. What a glorious moment. But there are so many highlights. The opening, Bone Machine, Break My Body, Something Against You. What a raw and powerful opener to the album. I also particularly love how the album ends with Brick is Red. If you haven't heard this one and you're a fan of punk, alternative rock, grunge, this is a must listen to. Yeah, this is an easy 9 out of 10. Now, jumping into a bit more hip-hop territory, so I was saying a moment ago that Au 33 Tours, they didn't have a very fleshed out rap section. Indeed, this is true. There's still a bunch of really interesting albums to find in there, and indeed one of them is A Tribe Called Quest's Low End Theory, which is their debut album and one of the defining rap albums of the 90s. It's ironic that I should find this album now because it's just an album that subconsciously had been progressively coming back more and more into my general rotation, musically speaking. And it's an album that, even though it came out in 1991, so well over 30 years ago now, it's an album that feels just as fresh as it ever did. There are countless highlights on this one. This is a decade-defining album. I feel like I'm saying this for every one of these, but once again, like I said at the beginning of the video, these are some of my most important musical experiences that I've ever had, and the reason why I'm adding them to my slowly growing collection of vinyls. We left the store at this point and we thought, hey, you know what, this is good. We're not going to spend any more money today. And as we were walking down the street, chatting up, there was another vinyl store we stumbled upon, and my buddy was like, hey, why don't we just go in, just take a look? Well, we don't need to get anything. Yeah. Sure, buddy. Luckily, I only spent money on one album, so I didn't go too wild, and it is a classic album. But before I forget, the name of the store is Friesen Rock. A much smaller store. I'd say it's like about a quarter the size of the one we just were in previously, but it has a bunch of interesting selection and a lot of really cool antique collector pieces if you're interested in that kind of thing. In any case, the album I got for myself is The Doors' classic 1967 debut album, well, self-titled The Doors. Especially with me watching and being all enamored with Apocalypse. Now, recently, I've really gotten into that film and the whole Heart of Darkness storyline. That's something that's been speaking to me very deeply recently. This album is very much coming at the right time in my life. Just the opening of that film with The End, which is actually the last song off of this album, man, it just sends shiver up my spine. But there's so many highlights. The opening, Break On Through to the Other Side, is just an absolute banger, a fire starter of an album. And indeed, talking about fire starters, you look no further than Light My Fire, one of the classics of that decade in music. This album is an absolute barn burner. Doesn't matter how old it gets, it just hasn't lost any of its potency. Now that about covers the vinyls I got with that encounter with my friend on that time, but a couple weeks previously I did mention in a previous video that I was in New York City with some friends, and indeed I was kind of hoping to go to a vinyl shop to get myself a vinyl or two of classic New York City music. That didn't quite happen, but I did happen to stumble across this vendor on the streets where I did find U2's The Joshua Tree, arguably one of their best, if not their best album. So I'm gonna add this one into this collection update video because I do think it is a lovely album. I know that U2 kind of has a bad rep with a lot of people. I kind of grew up listening to them, so I'm a bit biased perhaps. It was technically my first concert that I've been as a young kid growing up. When I saw them back in 2006 on the Vertigo tour. Arcade Fire also opened in Montreal for their funeral album back in the day, so that was quite the legendary day for me. Though I dare say I technically did have a zero. There was a concert that happened before that. When I was a kid, I kind of try to forget that ever happened, but it really did happen. So that would be the Backstreet Boys for their Black and Blue tour. Yeah, that happened. In any case, U2, Joshua Tree, classic status album. If you're wondering which albums from U2 to listen to, I definitely recommend this one the most. Perhaps next in line would be Achtung Baby and War. They did put out quite a few lovely albums. Whatever anyone might say to you guys. But as always, make your own opinion on that. So yeah, that's about it I have today for my collection update video. I do have more videos coming up, but you know what? I'm taking some time off from work right now to just stay at home, sleep in, read, sleep some more, make a lunch perhaps, and then sleep some more, play some Final Fantasy, and yeah, sleep some more. Just rest. I need it. Lord knows I need it. Alright, that is all for today. As always, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you as soon as I can. Oh, and I realized that I actually completely forgot to give scores for the other albums that I didn't mention. So, A Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory, nothing south of a 9 out of 10. Once again, another absolute classic. Really, ask anyone who's listened to this album, they're gonna go crazy over this one. And as for The Doors' debut album, that's a solid 9 out of 10. Once again, I might even bump it to 10 out of 10 just because it's such a classic and iconic album. But at this point, I'm wondering, am I being too generous with it? It's hard to be generous with an album quite so outstanding as this one. But yeah, I still think I'm going to keep it at 9 out of 10. As for The Joshua Tree, once again, like this is like a solid like 8 to 9. Easily 9 if we consider that it really is one of their best works of their entire career. So yeah, today in the collection update, it's a straight 9 out of 10 across the board basically. Once again, these are some of the most important albums I've had in my entire musical upbringing. There's been a lot, and I do mean a lot of them, and I don't give out these extremely high scores lightly. But in case you're unaware of these albums and have been curious to check them out, well, without further ado, go check them out because they are classics. All of them. As once again, 9 out of 10 across the board. Alright, that is all for real this time. Take care now.